Howdy, y'all. This is 3 Point Analysis. We are back with our second book club. We are going through Interlude 1 all the way up until chapter 29. So we haven't read 29, we've read up to Interlude 6 of this beautiful book, Brandon Sanderson's Way of Kings, starting off the Stormlight Archive. I am your host, Trinity, and this is my beautiful co-host over here.
My name is April. I'm the sister.
Yes, she is my sister. We had quite a fun time discussing the first section of the book. Um, Although this section of reading was, I would say, similar in the chapter size, it definitely feels like it was a lot more. Um, so if we get sidetracked or if we miss anything, forgive us, throw it in the comments. Like, we'd love to hear from everyone. But we are going to start with Interlude 1, since April's finished on chapter 11 last time.
Oops.
So we start off with a brand new character. Isik of the Pure Lake. I hope I'm saying that properly.
Mm-hmm. Our fisherman.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
How did you feel starting off a section with a character that we've never heard before and may not hear from again?
Just combobulating. But it was a nice little slice. You know, the person was having a good day, even though the water wasn't in a good mood, I think is what they said. Feel like was not in a good mood. Uh, there's a lady friend that's been trying to catch him for many a year.
Yeah, that was
Thought that
so
was kind of
interesting.
fun. Yeah. And then he whips out like a rare fish and she's like, oh, I'm never gonna catch you. It's funny the balance of that system. So I mean I enjoyed it, but yeah, it was I mean, don't even know where the Pure Lake is, geographically. Uh, or even really what span of time it's on, like on the timeline. So
I really liked it because Brandon started the chapter where like it is someone we haven't seen before. It is a place we haven't been before, but it's very slow compared to like the prologue or later interludes where they can really have some action. At least you got some time to be uncomfortable with not knowing what was going on and understanding that like, oh, I'm just getting information where I have no context right now and it will come later. The only thing I'm afraid of at this
mhm.
point with the book being so big is that like just this section we read, I barely remember Isik because he was such a small slice of what's been going on.
Mhm.
And I'd say
I
like,
think it's supposed to show you that there's different perspectives across the land, so to speak. Um,
well, like
it
completely
reminded
different
me of this.
mindsets.
Yeah, it reminds me of this like, time. I think it was first grade. I had a teacher was surprised by me saying something about how the city to me felt like it was very like busy. Everyone was in a rush to get places compared to like the country where people were like more slow and not in a rush.
Mm-hmm.
And this kind of showed that too, where like it's more like they showed us the hustle bustle, you know, example of like in the other chapters of like Yasna being in that main capital,
Mm-hmm.
and there's like a bunch of knowledge and people moving around in the streets, and then we're going to this guy that's like, why would you ever rush? There's no reason to ever run around here. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah. See, like so the chapter starts off and he's like walking to like Mob's place wherever she works. I can't remember if it's considered a bar or like a restaurant. Um, and goes through the fishing stuff that you brought up, which is like a competition, and if she essentially gets more brownie points than him, he will be forced to wed her, but in a way that feels like his intention is not to not be with her, but to make it as hard as possible on her. which like as
Right. Because he go on, sorry.
no, you're good, go ahead.
I thought that was kind of funny because he does say something. He's like, I've been thinking that maybe down the road I'll slow down and let her catch me. It's like she's not that bad. She's good at cooking. She's nice.
Yeah.
It's like you're right. So it's like it's not like he's like, oh, I don't really want to like be nailed down to this person because I don't like them. It's more so where he's like, I'm in this phase of my life. Maybe at a different phase this will work out, but until then, I gotta make sure I don't know her too much because she wants me. She wants my bed.
That's what I love. I feel like we started this section with a story that opens my eyes a little bit more because it's one of those things where it's like if I was in that situation, like I think I would be miserable with that sort of society. But that sort of society can still find like the small joys, even in their like more or less like twisted view of how things like work. It's like even though it's kind of weird, he's like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm still enjoying it because of this part.
Right. It just goes to show that people find joy in different things,
Mm-hmm.
which is cool.
And then Isaac talks to three strangers, and I wish at this point that I could remember the things that they spoke about, but I'm pretty much mainly focused on the fact that the floor was covered in water and they had shoes, and
Mm-hmm.
homeboy Isaac did not, and he was very judgmental about these other people's ways. I haven't gotten used to the terms yet, so I want to call them wetlanders, which is what the people from Wheel of Time are called, which is like the opposite of what they would be here, because they specifically do not handle wetlands. These people that are wearing shoes in this place.
Oh, what were they called? Here, let's look it up.
Foreigners? No.
Alethi. Two of them are Alethi.
Two are Lethe. Okay. Does it specify the
And
third one?
one, yeah, he says that he looks like he's Alethi because he's light skinned. Sorry, Hobbs. Uh, but he doesn't. He has the same accent. He has like a different accent. I think they said a Soleil accent, which I'm probably saying that wrong.
Okay, so then we'll just describe that real fast. Okay,
But
so
foreigners to Isaac.
okay, yeah. So the three foreigners, they're foreigners to Isaac. Two of them are for sure Alethi, like what he's saying, and one of them he's saying probably Alethi, but the accent was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Alethi from a foreign land, possibly. Um, and then nowhere in this chapter do they really say like where the Pure Lake is on the map, which I find interesting.
Yeah.
So I think that's where we're gonna end our summary for Interlude 1, because I mean, there's definitely more there. Like there is some meat and potatoes with the things that he says, as well as like talks about his religion quite a bit, but it's very in an offhanded way, as in like this is life, this is how we think, this is how things are, and so it's very hard to analyze in a first read through for me. But I found the chapter quite enjoying.
I'm trying to respect him, okay? His God doesn't actually exist. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to be honest, at this point, like, I'm a little discombobulated by what this world considers like a god, because there's clearly a distinct difference between a god, a herald, and a radiant or a shard bearer. And I could be getting all those terms wrong because I'm using all the context clues I possibly can. But it's jumping literally all the way to the very end of our reading. But I will say real fast that there is a later scene that made me really be like, wait, like, this is definitely going to be one of those books where you're given information from a ton of people, and eventually you'll figure out what the truth is, but none of them are going to have the exact right one unless you got a perspective of a god, which we can talk later because I think we might have. Okay, so you ready for interlude 2?
Oh yes, allude. Yeah, Shalon's siblings. Starts off with the eldest brother. Hi, non-Balat.
And non-Balat is also what I was thinking. I did listen to the audiobook for all of this. So I'm a little bit better with the names on this section, but we'll see how long that lasts. So, Anon Balat, who is Shalon's older brother, he's killing animals or torturing them in the
It's not
garden.
great.
No.
Not handling stress or life in a healthy way. Very, yeah, very not great.
I was say, is this
He
our
he
first?
said that he didn't necessarily do.
Okay.
I was gonna say he doesn't. He just says that he doesn't necessarily do it like for the joy of it, right? He's doing it as like a de-stressor, which is still not a sane thought, but that's what he's like. He's telling himself. He's like, oh, I'm doing it because it helps calm me.
Yeah, but like you can like play with your hair or draw on the dirt or throw fruits at the wall. You don't have to rip apart living creatures. But it did, yeah. It was
Well, he couldn't. One could it'd be like the devil's advocate. One could argue that he couldn't do certain things like bite his nails or do things like that because it's like he's having to present himself a certain way in front of strangers to uphold the household. But then again, I don't think it gives us too much context of like where he's ripping off the crab legs at. He could be doing that in the market for all I know.
I mean, what it felt
Sitting
like
in
in the
town
book,
square.
and this is a little hard because Brandon does, like I think I said in the previous recording, he does give you the description of the world around you and then sort of just moves on. And so it feels in the chapter like he's just ripping apart this creature and then like wanders down the property and continues on with his daily life. Like, this is just something that like at this point is casual. He doesn't care if people at his home just walk up on him. Is what it feels like. But is this the first representation we have as someone who's handicapped or disabled?
I don't know. The reason I'm saying I'm hesitating is because we have Dalinar's son. I don't know if that was brought up yet. Renarin?
Yeah, Renarin, as far as I know, has not been mentioned at all yet.
Oh, okay. Then yes. Yeah. This would be the first. It's not, is it non-Balat? Is the eldest brother that has a disability?
Yes, Non-Balat's the one who has like the is disabled from whatever happened with their dad. Whatever accident happened, he can't necessarily like walk properly. The thing is that you get it from his head, and it's something that he's living with, so you kind of get more of his emotions than anything else.
Mm.
But
Okay.
Let's pause for 1 second and see if he just says specifically what limb is. Because his hands work fine. It's him walking that he has a problem with. Walking down the steps was desperately hard work for him. 23 years old and already a cripple. Still felt a constant latent ache. The break had been bad, and the surgeon had nearly decided to cut off his entire leg. Okay, so it was a broken leg.
Okay.
So, Non-Balat had... I'm assuming this was from the dad incident. I think I may be assuming that. It may not strictly say that. But he had an accident in which he broke his leg. A surgeon tried to repair it and only got... So far, they considered like cutting it off, but he ended up keeping the leg. So he says he's crippled, and he has like a very negative connotation, but he needs some support when he's walking. I just like to mention, this is something I have felt a bit passionate about since like the most recent James Bond movie came out, but I find it very interesting when the first representation of either someone who's disabled or disfigured or handicapped, how you prefer to identify, if the first representation of them in a book is bad, like it makes me feel a bit uncomfortable. I do like you said, there is someone else later on in the series. I would say it still doesn't seem very great though. Like this book very much is emphasized at this point that like being handicapped is like a bad thing, which I understand why. Like it's detrimental to their lives. I'm just very hopeful that there will possibly be someone who is either enhanced by like the life that they went through because they didn't have like the same ability, or like someone who at least is represented in a positive light. Because oh my gosh, just Non-Balat like hate being crippled, like very much like feels like he puts a part of his personality into it, which is kind of heartbreaking because like it seems like it's something that was very recent, and like he can still do the majority of stuff that he needs to. I mean, he can still run his estate, he can still walk and hear like people read stuff to him, and he can still write and tear apart things in the garden. Um,
maybe that's part of it. Like maybe the reason why he's introduced in this way is because it's so fresh and new, so that he's having a hard time adjusting, and that's shown with him being so bogged down.
mm-hmm.
Maybe.
So we meet Non-Balat, and he is spending a good majority of his time, other than the dissecting that he's doing, thinking about Shalon. And I will say up front that it does make me a little heartbroken that Shalon is essentially just like thought about and offhandedly mentioned. She doesn't get a point of view chapter in this section. Definitely feeling a little bit of a loss. But he essentially, like, what I got from what he was saying was that Shalon is the least likely out of everyone in the family to be successful in this, but we had to send her, so we sent her away.
No faith in her at all.
None. And it's like...
Poor Shalon. I'm not surprised she made it this far. Jeez.
Yeah,
so what did you expect?
You think you would give her some credit at this point? Be like, oh, she has done more than I thought she was going to. That's awesome. Maybe, like, I should expect her to be at least okay through this. And he's like, I just hope everything doesn't get ruined. Still hoping that.
Yeah.
We do.
So I guess he's a good example so far of that mindset is important. You know, it's part of it's a factor, and his mindset's not great currently, but he's got a lot going on. Also,
I feel like
so
mindset.
But then so does Shalon, and she's keeping it high spirits.
I think mindset is like the biggest thing being displayed throughout the book, as well as like the biggest differences between each of the characters. Which is funny because they are more or less in completely different places doing completely different things, but what feels completely different is their minds, not the things that they're going through.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And we meet the youngest brother as well, right? So this is younger than Shallan, because Shallan, we find out if she's 15 or 16 or around, I'm assuming that's around the age she is.
we don't find any, we don't get any like age specifics because I definitely would have written that down. But we do get that Tet Wickham is the younger brother of Non,
Okay.
which I don't know. I'm assuming that means Shallan. I think Shallan is the youngest, but she could have a younger
Oh, okay.
brother. Yeah, it's not really specified.
So the younger brother has to be between, let's say, 23 and 14, because the oldest is 23.
Yeah, but
Okay.
they could mean he's 22.
It was in between 23
Yeah.
and 14. Yes, he could be possibly 22 or 21 or 19, 20, 18, 17, 16. I'm being facetious. I'm
I know
sorry.
you are. It's great. Anyways, he comes with him with an announcement. There is a big old problem that they need to handle. End of Interlude 2.
Yeah. Right when you feel like you're getting, it's like when you're like waking up from like a dream, and then you're like you're finally starting to understand your surroundings,
Mm-hmm.
and then he switches it to a new chapter. It's fine. It's okay. And so what are we going into next?
See, you say it's fine, but I really like, after reading The Wheel of Time, I feel like the way that interludes like this are handled is a little bit of a detriment to the like reading experience. Because while I am excited by that like cliffhanger, it never comes back in this entire section. And so, I mean, we're recording a week to possibly 2 weeks from now if everything goes wrong. But what if like he's not brought up again? Like by the time it's brought up again, like will I care? Will I remember? Like I don't know. We're gonna have to see. Okay.
Great.
So interlude 3. We're back with our little truthless boy. Zeph
Yes. Seth.
in the Bavlands. Um Essentially the Badlands with the D is a V instead. So if I say Badlands, I meant Bavlands. But it is quite fun to say. And we meet Took, who is Beth's new owner. These names are wild. Isik and Took, like, they're just so much fun to say, mouthword wise. Um,
Yeah, Took sounds like a code name for like a pilot or something to me.
that is way classier than what I'm thinking, which is just like a small creature just being like tuk 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 tuk. Bird call or
Like a little
something.
Pokemon.
Yeah, Pokemon. But this is okay. So this is where I feel like we really dive in because I finally have any context at all for what is going on. But we get a mention of the Oath Stone and kind
Mm-hmm.
of a little bit of the magic behind that. So, these I'm gonna, what does he call them? Thugs, slavers.
Slavers, yeah. I want to pause though. I don't know if I don't it, magic doesn't feel like the right word for this, because this seems like it's more like a code, like a following of a code. There's nothing making Zet listen to the oath, I think, other than the oath stone, other than that's what he's supposed to do.
See,
From what I took.
I got magic from what I assumed was like implied magical constraints like that he had on himself. Like he tells the guy when he gets the oath stone, he tells the guy the rule of like he can't kill himself. Like he's gonna obey all orders, but he can't kill himself. And then he thinks to himself, well, like, he can't ask me to give my shard blade up either. And so when he thought that, instead of saying it, I was like, oh, this is a magical constraint then. Because it's something that, like, it didn't feel like to me he was making the choice that this guy can't ask for the blade because I won't give it to him because of my oath. It made it feel more like this is the one thing that he can ask that I'm allowed by the magic to deny him, is giving up my blade.
Mm.
So if
Okay.
it is just an oath, I find that quite interesting. Like that's quite a bit of passion. But because of how like it feels like he describes it like it's sort of out of his control, which he doesn't specify whether or not it is. It just feels that way to me as a first time reader. That I did assume
Yeah, because I think
magic.
it's he said something as like it's not something that I could, or like I wouldn't give up my shard blade, but that's not something that he needs to know. You're right, where it's like he's like he makes it sound like it's like a constant, but it's not necessarily a decision that he's like making. Where he's like, I just don't want to give it up. It's like, oh no, he's just like that he's not required to,
Mm-hmm.
or it's not something that he can give up, something along those lines.
Right. Which I find very interesting because this is something I'm gonna bring it up probably 1,000 times. So if anyone wants to take a shot every time I bring up Wheel of Time, you're more than welcome to. Uh, but in the Wheel of Time, um, they have something similar where they have some of the magic users have like 3 O's that they have to live by, and they magically are bound to them. But they find over like years of being bound by this magic that you can actually get away with quite a bit that you probably didn't think you could get away with when you originally do the O's. So I could see it being something like that, especially because there was 1 or 2 sentences that were back to back that really jarred me in I think like a good way, because it showed like a little bit of a difference that I feel like I might be picking up on, because he mentions that he kind of has to answer any of the guy's questions. Then the guy asks him questions and he specifically in his head goes, I'm not gonna fully answer that question. Like, so you've already found the loophole.
Yeah.
Hmm.
He's he like follows the rules but gives what he's willing to give. He's like the bare minimum worker, which I don't really like the words with, but he's like, I've met job description. I don't have to give anymore. It's like his own freedom in a life of servitude. Oh, sorry.
Earthquake.
We've been blessed with Beamer. Let me see.
Oh, 3 cats. So for everybody who doesn't know, Beam is the
That's
one
all of them.
she's holding. Hobbs is the one staring at her close by, and the one all the way in the back is Morty. This is really a cat club where we occasionally talk about books. So we're starting section or part 2, right? This is the official start of part 2. Is chapter 12?
Yes.
Okay. So chapter 12 starts with them all on a hunt on the Shattered Plains. Adeline, Dalinar, Renarin,
Renarin.
the King, and Sadius. We're gonna have to come up with nicknames for all these people. Um, and it like starts off where Dalinar and the King are racing to the top of a hill, which what
Mm-hmm.
a carefree beginning to a story and an introduction to this character's point of view. But the idea of like 2 adult men in shard outfits like jogging like it's so much fun. It's so carefree.
It really is. And I also, it really shows you how much Dalinar cares for his nephew. Too, he doesn't necessarily at first mean to let him win, but then he's so happy that it brought so much joy to Alethkar. And he doesn't have anything bad really to say about him. He's like, he is a good king. He mentions that in this chapter, and you'll see that moving forward too, where he really wants what's best for his nephew. And I don't know if it gets into it, but you can see that like he's tied to a lot of guilt, and so he feels like very, very responsible for his nephew. Yeah, it seems like, I wouldn't say that he's more loyal to his nephew than his own sons, but you can tell that it's a priority for him.
Yeah, I would say, in my mind, it really feels like his nephew is not his nephew, but just another son. And he pretty much, like, talks like
Mm-hmm.
that.
Yeah, he kind of stepped into the place that Gavilar left open.
Yeah, and it just, so this is something that I was going to bring up later on, but I do feel like it's organically to do it now. But Gavilar is so present in these chapters. And to the point where, like, I feel like Gavilar is one of my main characters, and yet, like, not even alive. Like, they think about him so much and talk about him in so many different ways. It's like, oh, like, Gavilar comes to my head before Adolin or Sadius's name does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because you see that they have them, and it's like, it's interesting because they have this need to have Gavilar like in their front of minds, but for different reasons. Like, Alucard misses his father and he's paranoid. I don't know if they get into this episode, or chapter. And then and then Dalinar is like just wrecked with guilt. And so you see that he wants to follow in his brother's footsteps. Like, he didn't even understand at first, like, why he was reading that book, but he just picked it up and felt like he needed to continue on in the name of his brother, because he was so upset that he wasn't there for him when he needed to be.
Mm-hmm.
So
I do like in this chapter that we also get a bit of a descriptor of what the Shattered Plains look like from um, like the the higher ups in this society. Like Kaladin, when you get his point of view, like he's very much in the trenches, like a lot
like
less
the Light Eyes
descriptor.
nobility.
Yeah, Light Eyes. That's what I was thinking of. But like the view of the Shattered Plane from the Light Eyes nobility, because they very much can easily get onto like the higher peaks with like their shard um, bearers, and if they have shard plate, and look down upon what is going on, where like it's just a beautiful way that Brandon has made me feel like they are here, but they are still separated. Where Kaladin is here and he is within. He is a part of the Shattered Plains at this point. I found that really nice.
More swallowed up.
Mm-hmm. So they look over the plains and start to, give orders, and they're circling around various plateaus setting up for this hunt. And we meet the king's wit for the first time. Wit comes rolling up. How do you feel? How do you feel about
What are
Wit?
your thoughts on it? Oh, I think he's entertaining.
Yeah.
I enjoy him a lot. It seems like he's the thorn in the side of the Light Eyes, in the court of Alethkar. So
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy that a lot. I don't know. I don't feel like that you learn too much about him, so far, other than he's not afraid to tick people off. If anything, that's one of his favorite tasks,
I mean,
favorite pastimes.
you don't learn anything
Or
about him. You don't know his name. You don't know where he's from. Like, I honestly don't know what he looks like because I think they only describe it once. Um,
Yeah.
Like what you
You
learn
do
about
learn
wit
that there
is
was
his
a
wit,
wit before.
right? Which, with the things that
Yes.
come out of his mouth, I'm not surprised. And they mention later that, like, it's not technically against the law to kill a wit. It's just, like, kind of frowned upon.
I think it's like it is if you get caught. Like people,
Oh,
it's like
okay.
known that it happens. That's what it is.
Okay, here,
Yeah.
can't get caught. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I found, like, wit, I found very funny. I think I would definitely be one of those light eyes that, like, could not stand the fucker. Uh, um, but he definitely feels pretty aggressive because I think the king is more aggressive than most kings that I've seen in fantasy when it comes to calling out, like, the people beneath you and being a dick. Like, a lot of the time I've seen kings that are kind of like, they have a wit so that they don't have to say, like, certain things. But the king in this scenario still is pretty, like, okay with calling out his people and, like, doesn't need a wit to make jokes to reprimand people. Like, it really feels like wit is essentially there for entertainment. Even though they continue to, like, heavily
Yeah.
imply, like, no, Wit's here to say the jokes the king can. It's like, but the king actually does say jokes and he is pretty harsh as, like, a fellow bro.
Yeah. I think that is like one of the things that I was like Alethkar is a little rash. Is uh maybe he could show a little bit more restraint. But I guess it kind of goes to show, just explained like how stressed out he's made himself
Mm-hmm.
with the loop of thought. Have they gone over, or is that later on where they're talking about him just being worried about having the same thing happen to him that happened to his dad?
I think it is after this because the next section is the actual Chasm Fiend fight, and then we get, like, Dalinar's reaction afterwards, and everyone being like, "This is your reaction. Why are you surprised? This is the king's reaction too. Like, he's just as paranoid as you are because you're paranoid." Like, that sort of, like, conversation
Oh, okay,
section.
okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I took it as like this is something that's been like on Alethkar's mind for some time. This
Mm-hmm.
was just something where he was like, he used it as a evidence of his fears being warranted.
Mm-hmm.
So
So,
sorry for jumping, but I guess that's where we're heading in now. Is that something happens?
yeah, so they've got courtiers and scribes out on a small plateau getting ready for the fight. I think this is where we get our introduction to the Chol for the first time, which I would say when it first comes up, I think it's handled pretty quickly, which is why I'm having a hard time remembering the specifiers. And it took until later chapters when they brought up the chill again for me to be like, wait, I actually haven't put together what these are for. But they're either to bait the chasm fiends, chasm fiends like to eat them, or they're used to track them because they can smell them. But I would say I don't know. I don't think it's specified enough.
Right. Have they also described them like in very like a lot of detail? Because I'm just picturing like giant roly polies.
They have not described them in huge detail. They just talk about, like, their shells and what it's like when you kill them. But there is a picture. Um, where is it? Page 167, 168. Right before chapter 9 is a show. Let's see if this time I will. So
And then sending in the book, she said 167 and 168. Oh, kind of coming in. Yeah, it's way more moundy than I thought it was gonna be. Like it's you say it looks like a crab, but for all those Pokemon lovers out there, it's looking very Parasecty to me.
it does. Yeah, hermit crab and parasect together, definitely.
Yeah, nice, big, very big. Like I said, slow moving though.
Yes.
So we're and the Chasm Fiend is much bigger than that.
Yeah, the chasm fiend. I think I actually looked the Chasm Fiend up because they just have like what looks like an artist sketch, which I find really cool. It looks like a drawing that someone in the world drew of the Chasm Fiend. So it's very like big Chasm Fiend, small society underneath, like black and white, like hand drawing. It's what it looks like. Um, but the Chasm Fiends that
Not like if Shalon drew it, huh?
mm-hmm.
Not as exact. Sorry.
So the Chasm Fiend, when it first comes up, between like the action and the like subtle description, I would say I was very confused as to what was actually going on until we get to the point where Adeline, I said it right the first
Adolin.
time. Adolin.
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 Yeah.
That's the first letters getting me off. Um, Adolin starts to chop off legs of the creature with Dalinar.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was starting to put together like what the thing actually looked like, how big it was, like uh, like how spindly it was, and honestly how much of destruction it can cause by rampaging, but also being taken down in like the wrong area. This thing
Mm-hmm.
causes
It's like
some
felling
serious
a tree.
yeah.
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 Well, it's because like all of the things that they're working with are like rock, right? Because they're using shard blades that are known to cut through everything but flesh.
Mm-hmm.
And it's still like, oh, this is a challenge.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And you do get I believe this is the chapter where we get the 10 heartbeats description for the first time. This isn't
I
it's not
wouldn't
that
say
one
it's the
yet.
first time. No, you do hear it here, but the first time I think that they Seth does it. Seth in the
Truthless. Okay.
Truthless.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, where he does the same thing where they say like the 10 to count to heartbeats for him to summon the blade. So
Okay.
I don't know if it's used as something it's like where it's like you were talking about like magic or whatever, like if it's a magical requirement where they have to like wait to the time of 10 heartbeats, or if it's using as just a representation to tell you how fast, like that's the time period that it takes to summon one. I was having a hard time like nailing down what that was. If it's really just you being used as a to give you a gauge of time, or if it's a requirement where you have to be like, oh, an actual 10 full heartbeats, and then I can summon my blade.
See, I think it's one of
If
the
that makes any sense.
I got it as one of those things where it's like because they do talk about how young you can get like oathbound or whatever. It was one of the trainings that you would go through. So, kind of a combination of a few different things. One, you can tell, like everyone in society, I can summon my blade within the 10 heartbeats or whatever. Not that anyone else is going to really like conceptualize that too well. But when you're training someone to be like, this is the measurement in which we want to get to, we want to be able to summon your blade within 10 heartbeats. That way, you know how much time that you need because of instances where like I think there's a couple later on where they start to summon their blade at the exact time that they would know it's going to appear when something like comes down on them.
Mm,
So
okay.
moments
So
like that.
so it's almost like a show then of like the mastery of the blade then for them to know exactly how many where they're at. This is 10 heartbeats. I needed to be exactly here. And I know that because of practice and skill and understanding of my weapon and how to use it.
Yeah. So one of those things is like as a younger kid, it's like, hey, like you can get a shard blade, you can save someone's life with only 10 heartbeats, like something to be cool. Versus like now he's older, he's used the blade for so long, he's like, I just need my 10 heartbeats and I can do
Mm-hmm.
something.
Okay.
Because my thing is that like this is a big thing in magic systems that I've liked to super analyze over the last couple of years. And it's especially, we'll bring it up later, but with magic systems that very much are like men or female sort of stuff. Oh, hold on 1 second. Okay. When you went to scratch hobbies, your camera froze for a second.
Oh, couldn't handle all this
I
cuteness.
couldn't.
Cuteness overload.
What was I saying? Oh, the magic. Give me a second. I gotta reformulate my thought. Well, I can't remember. It was something about the heartbeats makes me think about like magic system nuances that I feel like a lot of books kind of wave away because it's like not plot relevant, which is something that I'll probably one day do a video on. I don't feel like everything needs to be plot relevant, especially readers don't need it. But if it's 10 heartbeats, like where's the specifier on like heartbeats? What happens if you are shard bearer with a heart palpitation or a racing heart? Is it faster? Is it different? Is it like is the 10 heartbeats based off of just Dalinar's time? Because it doesn't seem like it seems like 10 heartbeats is like a very structured thing versus 10 Dalinar heartbeats.
Mm-hmm. Maybe you have to be calm. It has to be 10 calm heartbeats.
It doesn't specify.
Okay, blood pressure reading because of that specification right there.
Well, I mean, wouldn't that be something that helps you? You know, if you're having a racing heart because it's adrenaline in a battle, is it those 10 heartbeats? Because that's going to be a different time than if you're like hanging out in your office.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully this was. So they are doing their little chasm battle with the chasm fiend, and just like the genius he is, Mr. King himself decides he wants to be the guy and runs up there and almost gets himself murked.
Mm-hmm.
With Dalinar because he's
at least he's not a coward. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't want a cowardly king. Does that make sense?
I don't want to.
But I guess again, he's a little too rash. Yeah, he needs to find balance. But you know, at least he's not willing to throw his people out. You know, I think about Sadeas, which is not necessarily fair though, because Alethkar's allowing Sadeas to follow those practices with the bridge crews. But I think it's probably because he's just so spaced away from it. He's not necessarily like thinking about that. But whenever he's not like he was like, oh, there's a chasm fiend. He's like, Sadeas, come here. You know, he does jump into the action himself. So that is something to be admired upon. He's not letting other people do the actions for him, even though it would have been smarter to take a step back and think there's people better equipped for this. Maybe I should let them handle it and I can take a step back on the sidelines and try to do what I can do there. But I don't know. I guess he didn't completely diminish my respect for him with him jumping into danger. So
see, I think this scene makes it so clear that he is not afraid to die. He's afraid to be assassinated. He's afraid to die like without honor and being surprised. Because if he was afraid to die, like he wouldn't be making these choices. Yeah. But also, like, what a thing to do to have like your father pass away and be like, I'm so terrified to die. Let me throw myself at everything that can kill me that I think I can handle to prove to myself, like, well, in this situation, I'll be fine. Like, in this situation, I'll be fine. Like, I would not be surprised if he's making all these choices in a sort of coping mechanism sort of way.
Mm-hmm. Or it's just like it's like it's not the death, not the maybe possible chance of dying that bothers him. It's purely the conspiracy, like the conspiring against him that he can't handle.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not like his father was afraid to die. It was like, you know, it was just he was conspired against.
Right.
So
Yeah.
but it also so we see him jump in and just really flub it.
Yeah.
Really, I don't know if that's the right term, but I'm gonna use it. He flubbed it hard, and then you see the beast, the legend, the the sung hero of Dalinar.
Mm-hmm. Dalinar
So
drops his blade and catches the chasm fiend's, I'm gonna say claw, even though that's probably not really what it is. Um,
vengeance.
Catches the claw, and what an epic scene! Like, there's got to be some serious fan art. I'm gonna have to look up some fan art when we're done with the book. I don't want to spoil anything yet, though. Of him saving them, and I will say, this is a little bit jumping forward, but they did not give Dalinar enough credit. Like, he kind of just gets like a pat on the back, and then like life moves on.
Well, because that's the whole thing is that they're like, this is just what we are expect. This is expected of you. We're more so like, oh, we can't believe that you've degraded so much now where you're not willing to fight. They're like, oh, that was just the way. So it really just shows you like how fierce Dalinar used to be, and like how he's made choices not. It's not because he's like everyone is saying, like, again, I'm jumping. I'm so sorry I did it. It's your fault. You tease me. But it's everyone's like, oh, you're so weak.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's like not it at all. It's a change of fundamentals.
I think.
His moral compass has changed compared to what society is like deemed important, and that's kind of like a crazy thing too. Is that you'll see is like what society deems to support important and how you feel ostracized for not. I've seen that in my time with like kids.
Mm-hmm.
People like you always had to have kids, and now we're reaching a point where like it's society's not always expecting you to have kids.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it just kind of goes to show that it's like there is like a standard, and the standards change, but there
Mm-hmm.
is like a society standard.
Yeah.
And Davilar is not hitting it, but he was hitting it then, like you said, but didn't get any credit because they're like, oh, that's just how you should be.
You're right. Yeah.
So
Yeah. So Dalinar saves the king. They get the gem heart, and that's the end of the chapter. We don't really get any aftermath yet. We dive into chapter 14 with Kaladin, um, who is at Sadeas's war camp in the Shattered Plains, which I felt like this is the first time my brain started to correlate, one, how close everyone is, like location wise, and two,
mm-hmm.
where the strings could be attaching our main characters to, or possibly having them at least interact. Um, I think this is in later chapters, but someone brings up Dalinar to Kaladin, and it's very fun to listen to other chapters and be like, ah, there's the main character of the other ones. There's the guy from the other ones.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially since it's like we've already been in the head of Dalinar, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then like Kaladin has like light eyes, all scum in his mind, and Dalinar is no exception to that rule in his mind. He's like, oh, he might just be playing a good image, but he's not a good person. Like believes that 100%.
Well, see,
Um,
Kaladin, I feel like at this point is the most nuanced character because he will think things and feel things and then tell himself he's feeling or thinking the exact opposite way. And like
mm-hmm.
he's
Trying to convince himself.
yeah, and then he does. He's very passionate with his hate, and then you go back to like him talking about being um Paladin Stormbringer, I think is what he calls himself. Um or like him being a surgeon, and there is no judgment, really. Like, he holds judgment for himself more than anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
So I do find it very interesting that he does seem to be aggressive, but I think when it comes down to it, he's gonna base someone more off of the actions and the position they are in than them being light eyes or not. Which I think is what's gonna keep open for him to be able to like bring everyone together like Dalinar's been needing.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think because we do see him. He's interacted with Light Eyes once so far in the story, and it was that woman, right, that he was being sold to.
Mm.
And does he not like talk about wanting to spit in her face, but then like chooses not to? I sort of like no. Oh my gosh, I can't believe like I thought that he like has some thought where he's like wants to say like something mean to her or like not treat her like because she's like a light eyes, like not be civil, and then he changes his mind. He's like, oh, I can do a sword and do all this stuff. Maybe I'm thinking of someone else that he was interacting with.
I mean, this has been the first read through, and I don't think I reread that section, but it came off to me more like he wanted to be aggressive because of the mood he was in, and then when he realized like talking about how he was a fighter and stuff like that might get him a better position, he kind of switched tactics, but it didn't really feel like it was about her. I feel like it was more about like him
Being of light eyes. Okay.
but
Okay, just being upset about the situation.
yeah, I could see him like like making the conscious choice not to be mean. If he specifically said like I was thinking about spitting at her, though, I would have highlighted that down because that is not some main character bullshit that I'm dealing with right now. But
I wonder where I pulled that out of. Somewhere. Paladin wanted to spit on somebody in the story, I guess. I don't know.
yeah,
I'm just
we'll see.
I'm making stuff up too, probably.
So Kaladin, in chapter 14, we're in the Shattered Plains. We're at Thetis' war camp, and Kaladin starts to get Bridge 4 training. Not that a whole lot of them are receptive. I think this is the day that none of them are. Gaz says he's not going to enforce it, and so Kaladin just goes and does his own morning exercises in front of everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Begrudgingly.
yep.
Which they say that that's the most important days to get into the gym is the days you don't want to do the gym.
It's true.
That's what they say.
It's true. And he thinks about Gaz. He's quite worried about him, about whether or not he's gonna kill him, which I'm so glad they brought up because the instant that Kaladin like brought him to the ground after him going to the honor chasm, I was like, "What is your plan? Like this guy could go and tell 3 soldiers that you did this to them, and they could all just kill you." Like in theory, I don't really think Kaladin would be able to be taken down by 3 soldiers just because he's our main boy, but couldn't very happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so he tells Syl, like, hey, like, keep an eye on him for me. Like, if he tries to come and kill me in the middle of the night, like, let a bro know, which is convenient.
Right. So he turns on his little spread security, but then also doesn't he like do the money thing where because he's already talked to him about payments,
Mm-hmm.
like giving him a part of his wage. But
Mm-hmm.
this is where he takes the entire wage. Gaz is like, oh wait, I thought you said that. He's like, no, no, give it all to me, and then he hands him back the what he promised him
Mm-hmm.
to just to remember like it's because I'm around, I'm alive that you're getting this extra cut. Like remember that there is motivation to keep me around. So he hits that base too.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely something that he's worried about because I mean it's we've seen that Gaz is not motivated from the goodness of his heart by any means.
No.
So
And that's what Kaladin seems to be thinking that Gaz is entirely motivated by money, which I think is also wrong.
yeah, no, I don't know if he doesn't think he's entirely run by it. He's just like banking on what he has to bank on, which we know that Gaz like does like money because they mention that when he's risking his
Yeah.
well-being trying to get the charged spheres.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
Because what I got from all
but
that is that, like, I think Gaz is mainly concerned about his position in life and getting a higher position of power.
Crabs in a bucket.
Yeah, that's what it's.
Yeah, sorry. He's willing. What that means is that he's willing to like pull people down to get more up, get forward. So like he doesn't. You're right. He's doesn't care about who he has to hurt to move up. So, but again, I think it's like Kaladin is aware of that. He's just has no other control. He's just like, I'm hoping that what I'm giving him's worth it. Fingers crossed. But in case, spread.
Yeah. So it's very much this
So
chapter is worried about Gaz being an issue, trying every sort of recourse to make sure that possible consequence is as minimal as possible if anything happens.
yeah.
Um,
And it's almost it's like if you're putting money in your like emergency fund and you're like worried that you're not putting enough money in the emergency fund, but you're like, this is all I have. I still have only the rest of these fears that need to pay rent and feed me.
mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm. And the big thing that I think we get out of this chapter is that Syl mentions that she knows what death is now, that she's understanding the concept and the emotions I'm assuming around it, which I find very interesting. Still grows quite a bit in the next few chapters that we see her. Yeah.
yeah, I thought you'd be proud of her too, because you in the last podcast we mentioned how she didn't realize that the leaf that she brought him was like poisonous,
Mm-hmm.
and then this time she's like, oh my gosh, I brought you a poison leaf like that. That was the best move. But
And I didn't
yeah,
even
so
realize
it
until
definitely goes to show like how much she's changed in a few days.
yeah, definitely. I didn't even realize until we got to this section that the blackthorn leaf and Dalinar being the Blackthorn Knight or whatever was like the same thing.
I hadn't thought of it until right now. Yeah, so interesting.
Yeah. Because he like
Huh.
someone says it very like with a lot of oomph in one of the later chapters, Dalinar being like the Blackthorn, whereas like that was why I was the Blackthorn. That was and as soon as the narrator said that I was like, oh, that's why that they were Blackthorn leaves. That makes more sense. It correlates to like another part of the story.
Yeah. Another subtle way of explaining just how deadly Dalinar is.
I literally was just thinking like Dalinar must be like death on the wind. Like that's gotta be crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, he uses strong words to show just how competent Dalinar is. Like a force. He's a
Mm-hmm.
force. Like which he's used to describe uh like the storms. Very
Mm-hmm.
powerful. Um so yeah.
Yeah. So
Very admirable, this Dalinar,
yeah, which I
as far
didn't.
as society looks at, like his competence.
Mm-hmm. I didn't realize until one of the um later chapters that the Dalinar that we are seeing may not be so far away from like a different Dalinar. Like I very much thought that this was like an old guy stuck in his ways at this point because of his brother, like stuck in that trauma, and that was the only thing that was really changing him. But you get a different side of Dalinar later on in one of these chapters, and we'll talk about it. But we're going back to them now in the Shattered Plains, chapter 15. We go back to Dalinar and his boy, Adolin. Look at me.
Oh yeah. Practice makes perfect.
So it's 4 hours after the Chasm Fiend has been slayed, and they are still cleaning up because it takes forever to do anything out there. And we go straight into
There's
giving Dalinar
processes,
shit.
Trinity.
Right? Right? They started off the chapter by being like, it's okay, it's been 4 hours, we're still doing this shit, and what are the Light Eyes people doing? Standing there chatting. That's It just sets up the atmosphere so well. So yeah, Delanor's getting shit for not winning gem hearts after he literally just saved the king's life.
I know. I was upset. That's so short-sighted. It's not short-sighted, it's what would be the word? He's not uh let me think about it. I'm not quite sure what I'm trying to say. It goes to show that he didn't realize, like you were talking about, like not only did like Dalinar not get any credit and like praise for what he did, but like Alethkar didn't realize the mortal danger that he was in. Like we were talking about he's not afraid of death. Maybe with him jumping to that, he's not even like aware of his own mortal coil, so to speak, other than when it comes to assassination.
Mm-hmm. That's what I don't think he is afraid of dying. I think he has absolutely no fear of being harmed or dying. I think he's afraid of dying an unhonorable death or dying like a death.
Mm-hmm.
Which it's very interesting because I know like when you're in it, like in those feelings, you cannot have that clarity. So it would not be surprising if the king does think he is afraid to die, even though he is making these reckless choices.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so they're rude to Dalinar, and eventually it starts almost a pretty big fight between Adolin and Sadeas. Sadeas tries to
Mm-hmm.
cross a line socially, and Dalinar very quickly puts him in his place.
Oh yeah. You didn't say what I think you just said, because if you did, I'd have to kick your ass.
I
Yeah.
mean, you're not trying to get murdered today, Sadeas, are you? Is that what we're doing? Because I just got a workout. Like,
Oh,
yeah, Dalinar's such a little badass.
all right. Let me clean my ears out. I don't think I heard you correctly. Can you try that again? It's, yeah.
Oh, there was such a cute little stretch from the morning behind you.
Oh, just a
Uh,
little stretch.
yeah, so Dalinar,
And Sadie is backs right down.
so fast. So fast.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's when, like, this is
You're
the
right.
point where I was like, oh, this really feels like a group of, like, brothers and cousins that are all just trying not to, like, not fuck around, but not fuck with each other so much that everything falls apart. Like, this feels like a normal, common
Mm-hmm.
occurrence that Dalinar has gotten used to. You know, sometimes you just have to remind
Right.
Sadeas that you could kill him.
Well, they used to be friends. That's like the crazy part with how they act now, is that they used to be friends.
Well, they don't
But
really
have we
mention that
reached?
yet. Yeah.
They mentioned. I think that they mentioned it a little bit in this part. Can I go over it? I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
it's in the other chapters yet. But they mentioned that it has to do with Gavilar's death.
Mm-hmm.
So Sadius thinks that Gavilar should have been there, shouldn't have been drunk.
Mm-hmm.
Gavilar also feels that way.
Mm-hmm.
But there was something else that Sadius did that night that involved like lack of security or something that was also involved with Gavilar's demise. So they both hold each other responsible for their beloved king.
Yes.
So I don't know if that I'm guessing that means that they were probably friends and friendly until that exact moment. And because it talks about how they decided to they spoke to each other
Mm-hmm.
and said that they were upset that they of how they handled the Gavilar thing, but they both had made the choice to protect Elhokar
Yeah.
moving forward, to do for the son what they do for the father.
Mm-hmm. Well, Dalinar actually thinks in his head, and he says it to Adolin, that he'll never be able to forgive Sadeas. Like, their relationship will never be the same because of the circumstance, but that they were close prior to it. And he says it in a way of like, he's very sad, which I find such a relatable thing to be like, hey, we went through this trauma together, and unfortunately, you didn't make the exact right choices, and neither did I. Um, so like, you didn't make the exact right choices, and neither did I, and both of us are hurting because of that, and there is nothing we can do to repair that because we can't take back time, and I may never be at the point of forgiveness for something that neither one of us can control, which is just absolutely heartbreaking.
Yeah.
I think it really goes to show why Dalinar handles Sadeas the way he does. And I think really helps emphasize later on after Dalinar's had his vision of why he's making the choices that he is and why he's okay with the choices that the king is
making.
making.
Because I'm like, I mean, I really wish that I remember the books better for
Mm-hmm.
having read them, but I'm like where Adolin is, where I'm just like, I don't like it's Dalinar. Why do we like Sadeas? Like, it just doesn't seem like the right move.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's not fun to be around. You know, he opens his mouth and says things that's offensive. I don't know. I'm just not a fan.
See, I feel like I'm on the
So,
other side of
and
the
then Davilar's over.
spectrum. Go ahead, Dalinar's wife.
I mean that he's just like making up excuses. You're like, it's Sadeas, you know, he's got good intentions, so
Yeah,
it's
that's
fine.
for me. I'm like, oh, Sadeas is like aggressive and shit, but at least he like says things up front, and he's willing to work with you. He's not like the guys who sent Dalinar a letter or a messenger later that was like, and my dude said if you pushed, I was to tell you that we've heard what's been going on, and no one's gonna work with you. We're not gonna work with you. Like you can go fuck yourself. Like at least Sadeas would be like, no, I'm not gonna work
Yeah.
with you because of this, this, and this, and they would sit there and listen to your arguments.
Oh, he never asked Sadeas. I don't think he
No, he
asked
doesn't.
Sadeas to work with him.
No, he doesn't. They
Oh,
work
okay, but you're right. He
together.
probably would have.
They work together to manipulate a high prince, and that's when you kind of get like their like how Sadeas handles relationships, even when there's like not great feelings between
Oh, okay.
people.
Yeah, sorry, because I thought maybe it got mixed up because Davalar does talk. Sorry, Dalinar does talk to another High Prince that denies him of
Yeah,
working together, and then he does have that also that other person that's like, no, be a courier. So,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
which is yeah, you're right. Okay, so yeah, there's worse High Princes out there, but I don't know if that makes me like Sadeas
No,
anymore.
understandable. Completely understandable. So we go to like this big chasm scene fight, and I didn't really like the pacing of this section of the book. Because we go to a like from the big fight to like resolution afterwards to Dalinar and Adolin examining the strap and trying to figure out whether or not it was cut or it was ripped. Um, which if this
Mm-hmm.
strap, oh my goodness, April, I'm gonna tell you right now, if this strap is not a big part of the story, I'm gonna get a little frustrated because we spend like what almost 3 chapters on it, and we still like it's still just like who some people think it was cut, some people think it could have been broken. Like we're not entirely sure. No one is like really asking anyone questions. Like you find out later on that like when Sadia starts to ask questions after he's been promoted, and he goes to talk to like Dalinar's guys that they were the ones that like did the putting on the harness or whatever. Like Dalinar,
Mm-hmm.
you're worried about it. You're trying to figure out if it was cut or not. So your first instinct is to go to a guy who makes them to see whether or not like it's cut. Why don't you ask the people that put it on there who work for you if anything happened? Or they saw anyone at all. Like, why did you not get this information
Mm-hmm.
until after Sadeas asked them and you're trying to figure out what information he got?
Right. I mean, maybe that just goes to show that like he just really like trusts everyone within his own camp. which I don't know how he would. I mean, it's not like he's like he's not recruiting everybody, but I mean, he's just like, everyone follows my fundamentals. I know I gotta have. We do surveys every week, and we're getting a general happiness of about 85%. So we know for a fact that these it wouldn't have been our guys. But you're right, it is really weird that he didn't do like the investigating. But I guess that kind of just goes to show that like he wasn't take it, as much as he wanted to say that he was taking it seriously, like he wasn't taking it as seriously as he needed to to appease Alethkar,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And so that's why you see like Sadeas jump on the opportunity, um, which shows how clever Sadeas is.
Well, I would
Um,
say
even if he's
the difference between how Dalinar handled it and how Sadeas handled it made it clear that Sadeas was the right choice.
mhm. Well,
To me.
one could argue, yeah, right choice for following the whims of Alethkar wasn't
Mm-hmm.
the right choice for like the well-being of Alethkar. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's really kind of like it's all that's about perspective too.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it's to like you said, to you and to Alethkar at least, Sadeas is the better decision
Mm-hmm.
because he's given him results that he wants. Uh, so
Well, I mean,
yeah.
not to like stack up my team, but I mean, I don't have only the king. I've also got Mystery Dream Dude, and Dalinar is about to be on my side too. By the end of the book, he's thinking about whether or not that is the right thing to be doing. So, but in this one, they just look at it, and then they go talk to the High Prince Vema. Oh, this is the place where we find Dalinar and Sadeas have gotten together to manipulate the High Prince. So Dalinar and Sadeas manipulate a High Prince more or less into. They say manipulate, and I do also agree that it was manipulation, but it's really just being honest with him. You use these soul casters because the king allows you to. If you're going to complain about them being expensive, we're going to tell you to shut the fuck up and raise the price.
Mm-hmm.
Don't use them if you're worried about it. Yeah. I really like this thing. This is the first mention of Gavilar's last words. Although I don't feel like there's a whole lot to talk about yet because they're just the last words.
Uh, I'm. Is it unite them
Yes.
or is it follow the code?
It's unite them. His last words to him alive were follow the code. But this is, I think, when they mentioned that Dalinar did get the message of unite them.
Oh,
But it
so
could
just
it
like a voice. It's not.
no because I think he mentions that he was not with Gavilar, but that he still got Gavilar's last words to him, which were to unite them. But he didn't specifically hear them.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, they were written in his blood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They explained that. I did
Which
not
was
know
an
that.
interesting. Yeah, it was an interesting twist because they talk about Gavilar's like, it's very weird that my brother would have wrote because I didn't know that he knew how to write since it's a feminine art, but he didn't write it. We know as the audience that Seth was the one that wrote it.
Yeah.
That's how it was put down in words
Mm-hmm.
like that. So, I have an interesting thing that I absorbed.
It's just small things like that with this book can have you for hours just running through the bare bones information that you have, and you're not going to come up. I'm not going to come up with anything yet. I'm so excited to get to um, the end of book 4 and be able to actually look back and understand some more. This will be interesting.
Right? I keep because of the little like the beginning of each chapter they have the little quotes of someone's like last phrase that they said before their death.
Mm-hmm.
And every single time I read, I'm like, well, this doesn't make any sense to me. But I feel like it's going to be important down the line. But for right now, I'm like, well, it's basically jibber jabber.
See, every time I read them, I'm just so interested on how we got the words, because some of them are like 10 seconds before death. This feels like some magic shit. Like Avatar: The Last Airbender is what I can think of like the library of all the scrolls. It's do people's last words just magically appear on a scroll somewhere? Like, how are we getting this information? It doesn't tell you anything about it, really. All right, so we're moving on to chapter 16. So chapter 16 is 7 and 1. Oh, 7.5 years ago, Kaladin with his brother, Tien, and his friend Laurel. So this is where we officially know that Tien is his brother, his younger brother.
Yeah, his younger brother. That's why he has a soft spot for younger boys. Yeah.
Yeah, which
remind him of Tien.
For someone who has a very inappropriate mind, the moment the narrator started saying that, and I was thinking, oh, this is why Kaladin has a thing for boys. I was like, how many times I'm gonna say Kaladin has a thing for boys? It's eventually gonna be pulled out of context somewhere for some short, and it's gonna be ridiculous.
He's just got a soft spot for young men.
Yeah. He sees those little boys and he just wants to take care of them.
Yes. And now you know why. Yeah. Which, I mean, Tien, what a little angel. Little angel baby. Collecting his rocks. It made me think about you when you were a kid. Having your little rock friends.
There were a couple of times where I was like, is this person autistic? The way that they're doing this seems a little on autism side.
You're allowed to have special interests in rocks and know exactly where you got your rocks and what kind of rock they are. And have a story for each rock.
All personalities, names, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So I very much love Tien.
And it also...
What?
Yeah, I think it's also interesting too, where like Kaladin over here having to learn with his dad, and he's like not necessarily super excited about it, but you don't hear the same thing about where he's his dad's forcing Tien to learn. So I guess Kaladin's only the one expected out of the two sons to be a surgeon. They don't really even mention what the aspirations are for Tien,
which is really interesting because in theory, what that means is that they don't have to worry about the eldest son dying. Like, that's not a common occurrence, because if it was, you would be more likely to start training the younger son in case the older son had an accident or something happens. So I'm also very curious as to how Tien died, because this doesn't seem like an environment in which children die, but they do get hurt because they were fixing the girl's hand earlier, and then later on, I believe Kaladin's working on another young person, and the surgeon has been frequently used over the last couple years. So I'm very interested in what exactly is going on in the town and what exactly happens to Tien that they were not worried about losing their first son.
Yeah. Have to find out.
And so
can't talk to you about it.
This is the first chapter in which Brandon's writing completely took me out of the book.
Okay. Tell me more.
I honestly didn't think it was gonna happen because I've seen a lot of Brandon's live streams. I've watched a lot of his courses and stuff like that. And we've read multiple books. Warbreaker is possibly my favorite book of all time. But Brandon literally does this, I'm going to tell you anyway in this chapter. The character says out loud, you know this, and then proceeds to describe it anyway. Which is, like, I understand that the character, like, we as the reader needed to know this information and that the characters knew the information, but it's essentially just a group of kids. And one of them goes, I know you already know this, I'm gonna tell you anyway. And then, like, he lets them talk. And so at that point, I was like, this is good information. This is, like, information that I need as a reader. But I'm completely, like, focused on the fact that this kid is telling something that he just said you already knew.
Yeah, I will give it a little bit of the benefit because it's like it is a child that's talking, and I feel like it is harder to write dialogue for children because they're not fully developed, that their brains aren't. So I mean, I can almost see a scenario of someone being like, I've told you this before. This is what I've told you. Maybe of that kind of like tone.
Yeah, that would be
But
understandable. Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, it didn't quite feel like that. At least it also, I don't think the narrator toned it that way.
No, that's what we'll move past it pretty quickly because it was just the one thing that I noticed. But it was one of those things where, like, I didn't even write it in my notes. I should have. Like, this is important information that I'm not going to retain because I'm so focused on the fact that you walked up and said, you know this, and then proceeded to describe something. Yeah.
Yeah, out of it. Okay, gotcha. But is this the chapter where we meet his like childhood friend, girlfriend?
Laurel?
Yeah, Laurel.
Yes, yes. Oh, I actually did remember what he explained to the kid. He explains to the kid what the kid already knew is that if a Dark Eyes gets a shard blade, they become Light Eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So on top of that, I guess I was really frustrated because Kaladin goes, "You already know this," and then gives us information that feels like it doesn't give us any information. Like the Dark Eyes turn into Light Eyes if they get a shard blade. It's like, okay, like that's kind of mentioned somewhere else. Oh my goodness, am I desperate for more information? Is it an instant magical transformation? Does it change who they are? Is it like a new soul put in them? Like, like, what do you mean light eyes? Do their eyes go white? Their eyes don't glow because we find out later on that like the old ones glowed, but the ones right now don't glow. It's just like, give me more info.
Yeah, I think it's like what's important as far as we know is that it's a change in status at the very least.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because it streamlines you straight to, I don't know if nobility is the right word.
Right. But I would say, as a reader, that none of that needed to be mentioned. It's very clear that if you get a magical blade, that people see you differently.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. 10 heartbeats.
Um, actually had a couple of problems with this chapter because this is the first time Kaladin is physically violent. At least that's what he implies in his mind.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I get like for me, this is definitely like a little bit of a projection because I struggle with anger issues. But the level of self awareness that Kaladin had at this age is very shocking to me. Like his
Mm-hmm.
ability to make an action, have a feeling, process that feeling, and put a name to it before the next action is done. Like I don't know of many children, if any at all, that have that level of self awareness at the age that Kaladin is in the show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's just a prodigy, Trinity. That's I don't know. I see what you're saying, but yeah, because
But
it's like he's aware and it's all very effortless.
it feels
But
disproportionate because you would think if the child was so aware at this age, by the time you're at Kaladin in the Shattered Plains, there would be a level of self awareness in which I don't feel like he actually has in the Shattered Plains. Like he very much feels his emotions and then takes the time to process them. you know?
See what you're saying. I was thinking about the competency of battle because it's just been shown throughout all of that he's just he's like the most competent
Yeah, no.
warrior as
I guess
excluding Dalinar.
the specific thing is that it's not the competence, because I understand that, but like when he goes to actually strike the kid, right, for the first time with his like staff or whatever, he thinks about how good it felt to be physically violent and what that means within like seconds. Where like as someone who has anger issues, and like I said at the beginning, this is a little bit of a projection. As a child, like those instances were very much an overwhelm of emotion, physical violence, and then a slow realization that those are not the reactions that you necessarily either wanted to have or thought were a good reaction. And then comes in like the self doubt, the shame that builds a foundation for depression, which I feel like Kaladin dabbles in later on. So it feels like this was
Mm-hmm.
a setup for that, but it was not described in the way that it would have been. Like it very much felt paced for a book versus paced to feel realistic, which I didn't.
Okay, I mean that's fair. Yeah, because I don't think I've ever like been in the heat of the moment. Sorry, I've got a light there. I've never been in like the heat of the moment. Where emotion like I was being run by emotions at the same time hyper aware of me being run by my emotions. Like that's definitely like an afterthought. Oh, cats playing. And an afterthought. Like once those emotions have settled down, then you can process your thoughts.
Yeah.
Children.
No, it was so cute because you were in the middle of talking and Morty like crouched in a way of his head just barely peeked behind your shoulder that he darted away. It's so cute. I'm gonna clip a short of that. Yeah, so I wish that he had done the physical violence and then like walked away with Laurel maybe, and then had the thoughts. But he very much like hit the kid,
Yeah.
felt bad instantly, like was aware of like what that means and what it doesn't mean. And then later in the chapter, he does think about what it would mean to like pick up a staff again or be violent or be a warrior. You could have saved those original self-aware emotions for that section and just had like that first one be very much emotions and chaos. Um, but I mean, maybe Brandon just did not experience overwhelming anger and violence in himself as a child.
Yeah. So this is also just so going back to Laurel because I just dislike her so much. She so there's like so this is the scene where like Kaladin ends up like on the ground and then like looks to like Laurel and she like literally just like turns away from him. So she's like motivated. She wants him to be motivated to like want to like move up the ladder, right? Because it's like kind of implied that she needs him to be like a light eyes to be interested in him. And so she like wants him to to want that, but like she doesn't actually care about his well-being or
No, it see,
his mental comfort.
I think Laurel is beautifully written. Because of just the
Okay.
amount of disgust that you get the reader to feel, because it's so subtle in the way that he writes it, but it is very clear, I think, that she is in love with Calvin. Like she wants to be with him.
The idea of Kaladin.
But he's not a person until he's light eyes status. Until he's no longer this low life dark eyes. He's not really a person to her. Yeah, so she's in love with the person that Kaladin could be if he does exactly what she thinks he should be doing. So anytime he or anyone around him does things that are not necessarily light eyes, they just don't exist to her anymore, including him if he partakes of it.
Mm-hmm.
Which is one like
Yeah.
a level of
Or
denial
even
that's destructive, but
Yeah. I mean, they even show that she just whenever she doesn't get her way, not even if people don't follow her like idea of them, but like when she doesn't get her way, because he makes mention of like I'm used to her going off and sulking and not talking because she gets upset for whatever reason. But that's not healthy. So
No, yeah, what a toxic relationship right there. Yeah.
yeah, so I
Um,
don't like her. If he could just move past that childhood crush. But it's like when your friend has like a boyfriend or a girlfriend that you don't like. You're like, I'm not seeing what you're seeing.
mm-hmm,
Uh,
mm-hmm.
but okay. So
But I mean, you
yeah.
also have to think about the fact that she's a Bright Lord's daughter, and she is allowed to be around people that aren't Light Eyes that are below Kaladin. Like, yes, they do say that Laurel like doesn't tend to hang out with them because of like their low status, but she's technically allowed to be around them. So she's either not having that supervision, like obviously her dad has died recently, or she's not high enough in her family status to actually hold as much value as she probably wants to have. Like this kid's life probably isn't great.
Right. I thought maybe it was even had to do with age, because don't they make mention that she's not old enough to need a sleeve for her safe hand?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe things would change when she becomes like of age,
Right.
or she wouldn't be able to spend as much time with, say, the agricultural kiddos and
Mm-hmm.
uh, people who are lower non than even Kaladin.
Right.
Is that the word that they use for the caste system? Is non?
I don't remember to be honest.
That's okay. I think it is.
I would
I'm gonna go into it with full confidence.
I would
The
say
the dot non.
the Docnon? Did you just
Mm, it's getting worse. Yeah, no, let's just stick with non.
I would say the hardest struggle that I am having with these series is that like I don't have a the way to like visualize things in my conscious mind. So like the difference between a light eyes and a dark eyes and a Parshendi and a Alethi and a Parshman that I don't have any distinguishing lines yet in my head. Except that
Mm-hmm.
they are different and they feel differently about each other.
Yeah, because like aren't the Parshendi like purple and red?
As far as I know, they're like purple, red, and black. And then I think
With
it's
marbling.
later,
Yeah.
yeah, it's later in this series that they actually go and examine Parshendi bodies and talk about how the distinct differences between Parshendi and Parshman, which,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, know so much. I feel like the Parshmen are like offhandedly mentioned, but I don't like they really haven't been described too much. Just like in relation to
They're
other
just dismissed
slaves.
by society.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's they're like, oh, they're always around. They're easier to use than slaves because they're like they just do whatever.
Mm-hmm.
They don't complain, which is really really weird.
Yeah.
That they seem so they're like they have like parshmen and then they're like fighting like the Parshendi at the same time. Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry.
You're good. I think I might say this.
But they don't make them citizens. It doesn't seem like it. Like the Parshmen, they like only use them as like tools or workmen. They're like they don't have any plate like they're not high up in the caste system, which is like so strange. So that are they not like citizens? Like
That's what
I
so
don't know.
like the way that my brain I haven't wanted to say anything because I'm pretty sure this is wrong. The way that my brain has put it is that like Alethi and Parshendi are two separate creatures, more or less, right? And so Parshman in my mind could be two things. Parshman could either be Parshendi that were taken and enslaved. So that's just like the name for an enslaved Parshman, is what I originally thought. But then when they went and actually looked at the Parshendi and like looked at their bodies and were starting to talk about how they physically are different, I was like, oh, so are Parshmen like a mixed breed between Alethi and Parshendi? Like, is it like the Alethi offshoot of someone who like had sex with a Parshendi, and then like they're different, so they're less. So we just call them Parshmen. You know?
Yeah. I mean, I think like I do kind of remember, so I feel like you're like getting closer to the ballpark, but
okay, then don't specify.
Yeah, we'll just leave it there.
So the end of chapter 16, Cal's dad tells him he's going to send him away at 16 to go become a surgeon. And Callan specifically says that he feels like his fate has been sealed. And I wrote down that this has got to be one of the major instances in which would lead Kaladin to a life of desperately trying to be in charge in order to like be free. Like I could easily see this being the point where he's like, I have absolutely no control over my life, and have that become something that's super important to him is to just like at least feel free in what he's doing. Which I feel like it's like a big character.
Family obligation though is a strong thing.
True. I mean, but how?
Sorry if you can hear thunder.
Got a storm going on now?
We do. We have a. Oh my gosh. We have a. It. I was gonna say one of the storms from this book, but I can't think of what they're called. So
High storm.
The Bit's lost. The what?
A high storm.
High storm. High storm. It's a high storm. We got a high storm brewing in. I need to get into my shelter. You know, we're not protected by the wind by a rock covering.
Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness. Okay, so we're moving on to chapter 17. If you're okay with it.
Mm-hmm.
I do feel like we're falling a bit behind. We may have to pick up our pace a bit. Okay, so we've got Kaladin back on the Shattered Plains, and this time he goes to the apothecary. And it doesn't pertain to the chapter, so I just have to bring it up real fast because it doesn't really matter. But this apothecary freaking offers Kaladin roofies, essentially. It's disturbing. Like,
Is he really?
Yeah. He offers.
That's not great.
He offers.
For what purpose?
To make people like the guy says that he can give him something to put in people's drinks to make them like more willing to work with you, or like more inclined to like give you what you want. But I think it's in the way he's talking about like do you need something to convince a woman to like be with you? Here's a beverage you can give her that she can drink, and she's a little bit more like willing to work with you. He's like offhandedly mentions it.
I'm like more flabbergasted. I'm like, what is it like his monthly promotion? So like he says that to everyone that walks in, or he just saw Kaladin's face and he's like, this is my demographic for this product. Like that's just okay. So that just kind of goes to show probably not the best fellow.
Yeah. No, yeah, and that was like my instant thing is that like the guy walks in and he just sits to offer Kaladin all this stuff, and Kaladin's like, I'm here for like band-aids.
Yeah.
Well, it also shows you what he's expecting.
Okay, that's not typical.
Bridgemen to show up for. Mm-hmm. He's like, do you want something to take away your pain, like just like blur your mind or blur someone else's mind so you can do stuff to them? He's like, no, like I want something to help heal me. And he's like, well, that shit's expensive.
Yeah. Ugh.
So this is where
it just kind of goes to show where there's like a disconnect of like people who have the ability to help and people who are the ones that need help, right? Because you're like, if like Dalinar like heard something like that was going on with in the camps and war camps, you think that he would like not like that, obviously, but it's not even something that's on his like mind. He was even talking about how he, for his own camps, encouraged his people, like his men, to bring their families to stay with them. So like he's thinking it's a safe place, but obviously like there's holes, ugh. Yeah, it's not great. Yeah, it just shows like you can only like your span of control only goes so far. Like it can then make waves for other people, but yeah. So
But I mean, it also
I
puts
don't know.
out the question of like, well, if everyone did run their bridge teams and their army sections like Dalinar did, would they be making the progress that they are? Would they be winning like they think they were if everyone was taking the extra steps that Dalinar's taking? Like that later on in the book, like Dalinar is trying out a new bridge and they like can't use that and like that, and they talk about how much time they wasted essentially on just trying to see if this bridge would work.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Which is funny because, like, why is time so important? They've been working on this for 6 years and haven't, you know.
mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, what's another 6?
Yeah. Well, I find it so interesting that we're like almost halfway through the book, and I feel like I don't really know anything about the war.
Did you see? Sorry, did you see Hobbs? It was cat approved. The book. He could put this. He could put the cat stamp on there now. Sorry, go on. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I was just thinking that, like, you know how the women in this book reads to their men, like it has to be read out loud to hobbies before he can prove it.
You're right. You're right. This is my job. This is my job to help you read hobbies. Sorry.
You're good.
It's the rain. In case you're wondering why his face is like, what's happening? It's just started pouring rain more.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And he's apprehensive about storms. It's okay, Hobbs. It's okay.
So, Kaladin
So does he
goes.
get any supplies?
He does
Yeah.
not this
Sorry.
time. He gets information though. He does. He's told the pricing of different things, and then he's told you can only get a droplet or two from this plant. But you could technically go get it yourself if you really wanted to.
At most 2 drops, the man says.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Which is like, it's so funny because it definitely feels like one of those things where this guy clearly doesn't care that he's lying. But it also is one of those things where he instantly knows how uneducated Kaladin is because Kaladin not instantly being like, I know that's fucking stupid and wrong. Like, lets you know that Kaladin doesn't work with plants. Because anyone that I know of that works with plants, like, they give you more, and if you don't get more, you learn other ways to use it. You mash up the stems, or like you're using every inch of that thing if you can, not getting a drop or two and then discarding it, or else you wouldn't be selling it at a camp. Mm-hmm. They're
Yeah.
not gonna import that shit. Yeah. So I think the guy instantly knew that Kaladin had no idea like what the rules or like what the actual circumstances were. And so at that point, he was like, I can lie whatever the hell I want to.
Mm-hmm. Just another bad, or a good example of that the person's not a good person.
Mm-hmm.
Withholding knowledge
Mm-hmm.
is a pretty big crime in my eyes.
And this chapter, Kaladin does mention to always keep a glowing sphere in your pocket because if you're ever without light, you can use it for light, which I thought was brilliant. And then Syl.
You've seen it. Random. They've used it before. Shalon used it at the library, so they use spheres for lighting quite a bit.
Yes. You've seen it, but you haven't heard like the always keep it on you kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But Kaladin and Syl have a little conversation about humans, and Syl says people are discord, and I wrote that down because it made me laugh a lot. Syl is getting a hang of society real fast, and from a third party's perspective, I think she's much more aware of things than Kaladin is in certain circumstances, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's the end of chapter
And
7.
she's got a moral compass. That little spread.
Well, she has a moral instinct, I would say.
Moral instinct.
Because
Mm-hmm.
her first feelings are what she is considering to be the right feelings.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll try to blaze through this pretty fast. Okay, so we're running out of time. blazing through. So we're on chapter 18. Dalinar and Adolin again in the Shattered Plains. Adolin is walking around with Janala. He's got himself a girl that he has been courting, which I find so interesting that he is in the middle of investigating with Dalinar about whether or not the king was possibly trying to be assassinated. And he's like, but I gotta flirt with my bitches at the same time.
Yeah, he's trying to multitask. You know, he's got only so many hours in the day, and he wants to get his date mixed in with his investigation. I respect that. I don't think Yanala did though. Not at all.
No, no. And this is also where we really meet Renarin. Dalinar talks to him and lets him know that due to his blood weakness, he will give him like the next shard plate and shard blade that he gets, which I don't think they really specify what the blood weakness is.
I don't think so either. I just like I literally imagine he was like me, or like he sees blood, he just like faints.
See,
Yeah, that's the blood weakness.
blood weakness to me made me think like because I had been thinking about the Parshendi stuff and Parshman, that maybe this is like a bastard son that has like his mom was like of the lesser blood is what I thought blood weakness might mean, but they didn't specify.
Okay. Is that the end of the chapter?
Talk to him. Blood weakness. Kadash tells a story about the hierocracy when the church tried to take over the world. Um, so essentially, like Kadash explains to Dalinar, like a world with Catholics in it. Really, just the priests take over instead of doing like what the Almighty actually wanted. They just do what benefits them, and how that like kind of ruined the world in certain ways. And then Dalinar finds out that the king is you know, not interested in changing things up. That he thinks Dalinar is getting weak and should probably just retire. He doesn't really want to be listening to him. And Dalinar finally realizes what I'm doing is not working. If I continue to act this way, if I continue to say these things, I'm going to get the opposite of what I want. I'm going to be excommunicated, essentially. So I gotta change my tactic. And finally, when he's like, but like, think about how powerful we would be. Think about how great it would be. Then the king's like, okay, maybe.
Maybe, yeah. If you continue fighting and you like show me some results, maybe I'll make you the. Oh my gosh, what is it called? High Prince of War.
High Prince of War, yeah.
Yeah, High Prince of War, which is not which he ends up giving not that to him, but High Prince of Information to
Sadius, yeah.
Thaddeus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that is the end of that chapter. That one's pretty quick. We finishing a little early. There will be a part 2 of this video. You'll see it. It'll pop up. And if you're worried about it, you can always DM me on Instagram. It'll be in the description below. Bye, everybody.